Chapter 1. Why you wouldn't last a day as a Roman peasant. The air is thick before the sun rises, clinging to your skin with the cool dampness of early dawn. You awaken not to an alarm or a gentle nudge, but to the stiff ache in your back and the dull scent of smoke drifting from last night's hearth. The straw beneath you crinkles as you shift, scratching your legs through a threadbare woolen tunic. The floor, hard and packed with dirt, has long since stolen any warmth. You open your eyes to the dim glow of embers and the outline of a thatched ceiling, your breath visible in the cold morning. You are a Roman peasant. A farmer. A small cog in the great machinery of the empire. Your hut is narrow and cramped, built of sun-dried mud bricks and roofed with woven reeds. Outside, the sky is a steel gray, not yet touched by light. You pull yourself upright, your joints protesting, and push open the low wooden door. Damp earth greets your bare feet. The air carries the sharp scent of manure, smoke, and the faint aroma of dew-wet olives. The ox lowing in the distance is your call to labor. The animal is old, its ribs showing through its mottled hide, but it is your most valuable possession. You pass the sleeping shapes of your wife and children, curled together on the straw for warmth. There is no room for privacy. No time for rest. You step out into the twilight, lifting the worn wooden yoke onto your shoulders as the ox shuffles into position beside you. The plow you guide is primitive, wooden, iron-tipped, and heavy. Its handle is smooth from years of use, from your father's hands before yours. The land is stubborn. Stones push up from the soil like the bones of the earth itself. Each furrow you carve is won with effort. Your muscles burn, your palms blister. Birds circle lazily overhead, waiting to pick at unearthed grubs. Sweat begins to bead at your brow long before the sun clears the hills. By the time the sun is high, its heat is a hammer. Your tunic clings to you, damp and coarse. You pause only briefly, taking refuge under the knotted arms of a lone olive tree. From a sack at your hip, you draw your meal, a hunk of yesterday's bread, coarse and dry, dipped in watered-down wine that tastes faintly sour. If you're lucky, there's a bruised onion or a few figs. You chew in silence, listening to the buzz of flies, the creak of distant carts, and the labored breathing of the ox beside you. There is no clean water. The nearest well is 2 fields away, claimed by another tenant farmer. You drink from the stream when you must, muddy and shared by the village animals. Sickness lingers in the water, in the cuts on your hands, in the mosquitoes that rise from the marshland every dusk. Fevers come and go. Sometimes people don't recover. In the distance, the villa of your landlord gleams white on the hillside. He is a name you barely know, a man who owns the land beneath your feet and the grain you grow. Your rent is due in coin or crop, and falling short means debt. Debt leads to seizure, to chains. You've seen it happen. The fields know the names of men who never came back. Evening arrives slowly. The heat fades, replaced by a cooler breeze that stirs the olive branches. You walk the ox back to its lean-to, rubbing its neck in a rare gesture of affection. Its labor is your survival. The tools return to their corner, a hoe with a splintered handle, a bent sickle, and you step inside the hut again, the smoke from the hearth now thicker, comforting. Your wife is kneading flatbread. The children poke the coals, whispering stories of temple festivals they've never seen. You eat together, in the dim light of a clay lamp. No chairs. No plates. Bread is torn by hand, passed with fingers rough as bark. Someone coughs in the dark. Someone always coughs. When you finally lie down, the straw is prickly, the blanket thin. You listen to the sounds of the village, a donkey braying, the hush of wind through the trees, the clatter of a neighbor's door. Your body hums with exhaustion. The empire is vast, but you are unseen. You are the hands that feed it, the back that bears its weight. Tomorrow, it begins again. And still, in the quiet just before sleep, you wonder, not of greatness, not of rebellion, but of rest. Of cool water. Of a day without pain. But those are dreams. And dreams do not plow fields. You wake again before the stars have disappeared. There is no such thing as sleeping in. Chickens cluck restlessly in the pen behind the house, and your wife stirs beside you, already reaching for the clay jug with what little water remains. Today is market day in the village, and the walk will be long. You tie your sandals, thin strips of leather barely holding together, and sling a sack over your shoulder. Inside, 2 loaves of bread, a bundle of herbs, and a handful of eggs wrapped in straw. It is not much. It never is. The road is little more than a trampled path, winding between fields and scrub. As you walk, others join, neighbors and fellow peasants, all with the same hunched shoulders, the same tired eyes. There is little conversation. The sun climbs higher, and dust begins to rise with each step. At the village edge, sounds replace silence, merchants shouting, goats bleating, pots clanging. This is not a place of excitement, but necessity. You barter. You haggle. You try not to look too desperate. A few coppers for herbs. A bit of cloth for bread. Every trade is a calculation. One misstep, one poor deal, and your family goes hungry. Nearby, a Roman official watches the market, his eyes impassive beneath a polished helmet. He does not interfere, but his presence is enough. No one forgets who holds the power. Before leaving, you buy salt, expensive, but necessary. Then you return home, the afternoon sun pounding your shoulders. Your steps are slower. The sack is lighter. But life must go on. The children greet you at the hut with hollow joy. Bread is broken again, shared and rationed. Your wife speaks of a neighbor who fell ill. There are rumors of new taxes. You say little. There is nothing to be done. As darkness falls, you watch the firelight dance on the walls of your home. Shadows flicker like ghosts of ancestors long gone. You wonder if they endured the same. If they too lived and died in service to something vast and indifferent. Outside, the crickets begin to sing. You lie down, aching, your soul worn thin. Sleep comes, eventually. Not as peace, but as escape. Weeks pass. Rain comes late, and the fields drink it greedily. The planting must begin again, your hands red and raw from turning the soil. You work alongside your eldest son, his face already hardened by sun and labor, though he is barely 12. He asks no questions. Children learn early to accept. One afternoon, a messenger arrives on horseback, his cloak bearing the insignia of Rome. He reads a proclamation in the village square, an increase in grain quotas. The murmurs spread quickly. Some shout. A few cry. But most remain silent, their anger buried beneath years of obedience. You return home that night with fewer words than usual. Your wife watches you, her eyes tired but steady. You both know what must be done. So you work harder. Rise earlier. Sleep later. The ox grows thinner. Your youngest falls ill. You make a poultice from herbs and whisper prayers to gods you no longer believe in. He survives, but just barely. His cough remains. On a rare night, your village hosts a festival. Clay lanterns hang from sticks. There is laughter, weak but sincere. Children run barefoot, chasing fireflies. You drink watered wine and remember how it feels to laugh. Just for a moment. But soon, it ends. As everything does. And in the hush that follows, you return to your hut, your family, your straw mat. You listen to your children breathe, to your wife shifting beside you. And you wonder, as always, if this life, this invisible, relentless life, will ever be more than what it is. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, the fields await. 1 year becomes 5. The seasons blur, blistering summers, frost-bitten winters, and springs that tease with promise but deliver drought. The ox dies one winter, ribs jutting like broken bows from its flank. You bury it behind the hut, beside the wild rosemary, and barter for a younger one, half-trained, less obedient. It takes time, more labor, more blisters. But the work never stops. Your eldest son is now taller than you, shoulders broad, voice deepened. He wakes before you do, sometimes. It fills you with both pride and dread. You fear he will inherit this life. Worse, that he has already accepted it. Taxes have increased again. The governor's men arrive more often now, demanding tribute, grain, or coin. You have little of either. You trade tools, blankets, a carved wooden bowl from your grandfather. One day, they threaten to take your son. You pay with your last 2 denarii. That night, your wife weeps silently, hidden behind the firelight. Your youngest has never been strong. His breath rattles in the mornings. His cough, constant. You save a few figs each week to coax him to eat. Sometimes, when he sleeps, you watch his chest rise and fall, wondering if each breath will be his last. But he is still there, beside you. That is enough. When he laughs, truly laughs, it is like birdsong breaking the weight of the sky. You do not hope for much anymore. Just for the next harvest to be kind. For your wife to remain healthy. For one more year where the fields do not betray you. You know Rome will never know your name. You will never see the sea, or the Colosseum, or the temples whispered about by passing travelers. But in the hum of your wife's voice, the calloused hand of your son, the frail smile of your youngest, you find something of eternity. It is not glory. But it is enough. And so, as the stars will overhead and the earth sleeps beneath your feet, you press your body to the straw, close your eyes, and let the night take you. Tomorrow, the fields will wake with you. And so it begins again. Chapter 2, The Rise and Fall of Spartacus. Part 1, Prologue, The Dream in Chains. Before the chains, there was wind. Not the dry, choking dust of Capua, but the wind of Thrace, sharp, clean, and alive. It rushed through the mountain passes with the roar of wolves and kissed the tall grass along the river valleys. It snapped against leather shields and braided itself into the hair of warriors before battle. Spartacus remembered that wind better than he remembered his mother's face. In his dreams, he still stood atop the cliffs near Sparta, his sword gripped loosely in one hand, the sky bruised with the scent of coming storm. His wife's laughter carried up from the field below, where she and others of the village gathered firewood and wild berries. She wore blue that day, or perhaps red, memory blurred the color, but not the sound of her voice or the warmth of her hand as they climbed down together toward the firelight. That life ended with iron. Not in battle, but in betrayal. A Roman scouting party, mercenaries with no banners, fell upon them under moonlight. He killed 2 before a third crushed his skull with a sling stone. When he woke, his wrists were bound, his wife gone, his name a whisper on the wind. Now, he woke each morning not to her touch, but to the stink of unwashed bodies and sour wine. The stone ceiling above him bore no stars, only soot. The straw pallet beneath him scratched like thorns. And the wind, if it ever came at all, was little more than a sigh between the cracks in the prison wall. Capua. The heart of Roman spectacle. Here, men were not born, they were broken and sold for blood. Spartacus sat up on his cot, wincing as his bruised shoulder caught the edge of the wall. The injury was 2 days old, earned during a mock duel with a red-faced Thracian who fought like a bear but thought like a sheep. The doctor had let it go too far, as he often did, watching how the men handled pain. Spartacus had won, but he felt little satisfaction in it. Around him, the other gladiators stirred. Barca, the Carthaginian, already sat cross-legged against the wall, sharpening a training blade on a stone, his face impassive. Gannicus snored softly nearby, one leg hanging off his cot, his mouth parted in drunken sleep. Crassus, the hulking Gaul, stretched and groaned, the muscles in his back rippling like drawn bowstrings. They were warriors, all of them, some more skilled than others, but all caught in the same net. Shackled, branded, traded. Flesh turned into theater. Spartacus rose. The chains on his ankles no longer rattled when he moved. He had learned how to walk with them, how to stand still without their weight dragging him forward. The skin at his wrists had long since calloused. He could lift his arms without feeling the rub of iron anymore. But the weight remained. Not of the chains themselves, but of why they were there. He washed quickly, the water in the stone basin cold and copper-scented. A slave brought him his training tunic, tattered and sweat-stained. The bell had not yet rung, but it would soon. When it did, they would line up like dogs, run drills in the yard, spar until blood was drawn and spirits frayed. But for now, just for a breath, Spartacus leaned against the wall and let his mind drift. He saw her again. His wife. No longer a blur. She was in the dream, smiling. Her eyes were steady. Her voice calm. He had no idea if she was alive. But he needed to believe. The Romans could strip his name, break his body, pit him against friends for sport, but they could not take that need. It was the last thing they had not chained. And one day, when the moment came, when the wind changed again, he would be ready. He would rise. Not as a slave. Not as an entertainer. But as something they feared. Part 2, the ludus, brotherhood in blood. The clang of the morning bell echoed like thunder over the cracked yard. A flock of gulls startled from the roofline. Dust rose from the ground in lazy swirls, catching golden rays of sun. Another day. Another round of bruises. Another test of how much a man could lose and still remain himself. Spartacus stepped into the glare with the rest of the damned. The training yard stretched between high walls topped with iron spikes. Watching platforms lined one side, empty for now, but when rich patrons came to visit, they would fill with silk and sneers, sipping wine as they surveyed their human wares. Here, men became weapons. The doctor stood in the center, arms crossed, one eye milky from an old wound. He had once been like them, a champion of the arena, undefeated until his final match took his sight and half his jaw. Now, he ruled the ludus with a blade's discipline. Form ranks, he barked. They obeyed. Not because they feared death, but because they feared being the weak link in a chain of killers. Wooden swords were passed down the line. Weighted replicas of gladii, crude, heavy, but effective. Spartacus caught his by the hilt and moved automatically into position. Beside him, Crassus grinned like a wolf. "Think the old man will finally let us spar with real blades," the Gaul whispered. Spartacus shook his head, lips tight. "You want to bleed before the crowd even sees you?" Crassus laughed and cracked his neck. "Blood's blood. Better spilled here than for the pigs in the stands." They were paired again. They often were. The doctor said it was because they challenged each other. In truth, it was because their duels drew attention, even here, behind closed walls. Crassus was fury made flesh. Spartacus was fire in waiting. Wood clashed against wood. The sparring began. Crassus came in heavy, his strikes wild but devastating, aiming high, forcing Spartacus to retreat. Sand kicked up around their feet. Muscles screamed. Joints ached. Spectators jeered from the balconies, other slaves not chosen to train this round. Spartacus waited. Waited. Then turned a lunge into a pivot, struck the Gaul's side with the flat of his blade. Crassus grunted, staggered, recovered. They circled again. By the time the bell rang to end the session, they were both panting, bruised, slick with sweat and grit. Crassus spat blood and grinned. "One day, Thracian, we'll fight with steel." "And one of us won't rise," Spartacus replied. Crassus only laughed harder. After drills came formation training, shield walls, phalanx movement, coordinated rushes. Spartacus saw it for what it was, a game. The Romans honed them not just as fighters, but as illusions of order. Violence given discipline. Rebellion made safe. Yet within that imposed structure, bonds began to form. In the mess hall, they ate in silence, barley mash, bread so hard it cracked teeth, the occasional bone-picked scrap of meat. But silence did not mean isolation. Gannicus, the silver-tongued Celt, often broke the quiet with stories of feasts and flames back home. "We drank honey wine from hollowed horns," he said once, voice rising with the memory. "Sang songs that shook the trees. Made love beneath the stars." Barca, ever watchful, rolled his eyes. "And then what? Romans fell from the sky to drag you here?" Gannicus lifted his bowl with a flourish. "They envied my charm." They laughed. Even Spartacus. a rare sound, rough from disuse. It was in those stolen moments, after bruises, before nightmares, that the brotherhood took shape. No chains could bind them tighter than shared pain. Each man carried ghosts. Each fought a battle deeper than the one in the sand. And Spartacus listened. He asked questions. Where would you go, if the gate opened tomorrow? Some scoffed. Some dreamed. Back to Carthage, Barca said. To the forests, Gannicus added. To the sea, whispered a boy barely old enough to shave. And Spartacus said nothing. Not yet. He had begun to watch the guards closely. Counted their shifts. Noted which keys they wore and when. He studied the locks, the hinges, the gaps in patrols. He walked routes twice, once for himself, once in memory. He started to train differently. Slower. Smoother. He taught others to fall without noise, to pass blades hand to hand without notice. He turned laughter into code, bruises into drills. The doctor noticed. Of course he did. You're not just training to win, are you? He asked one day, catching Spartacus after drills. Spartacus met his gaze and said nothing. That was answer enough. The old man said no more, but the next day, he paired Spartacus with a green recruit, soft and wide-eyed. A message, I see you. I could end you. Don't force me to choose. Spartacus understood. But still, the ember inside him glowed brighter. Each morning, each drill, each whisper at night among bruised ribs and broken bread. He knew. This place made monsters. But it had also made a spark. And if enough sparks rose together, Rome would burn. Part 3, The Escape, Fire at Night. It began with a broken key. The kind of moment most would miss, a drunk guard, red-faced and slurring, fumbling for the iron ring at his belt as he relieved himself against the training yard wall. A clang. A curse. Then silence. By the time he realized one of the keys was missing, Spartacus had already marked the sound, the time, the face. It was the final piece. The plan had taken weeks. Longer, really. It began not with weapons, but with trust. He had spent months building it, earned through bruises, through quiet nods, through the simple act of sharing food when there wasn't enough. Not all believed. But enough did. They practiced in shadows. Not just fighting, but timing. How to move as one. How to breathe without panic. How to strike without warning and fade into silence again. Gannicus made jokes to mask drills. Barca taught the weakest how to move their weight like warriors. Even Crassus, who once mocked dreams of escape, joined in, muttering, "If I'm to die, better free than chained." And then came the cook. A bent old man with burned scars and milky eyes who had spent 20 years feeding gladiators their last meals. No one noticed him. Not really. But Spartacus did. He asked his name. He shared his bread. And one night, the cook whispered back, "I still have knives. Hidden. And rage. 3 cleavers, tucked in greasy aprons. A pouch of rusted nails for the makeshift clubs. A stolen gladius hidden in a barrel of pickled onions." It wasn't much. But they wouldn't need much. They would have surprise. The night came heavy with heat. Moonless. Even the stars seemed to draw back in anticipation. The guards laughed in their tower, already deep into their wine. The doctor, strangely absent from his usual perch. Spartacus stood in the corner of the sleeping quarters, his breath steady, hands clenched. Around him, men waited, silent. Not afraid. Not anymore. When the signal came, a single knock, 3 times, from beneath the kitchen's grating, they moved. 70 men. Each one trained to kill, forced to perform. Now, that skill belonged to them again. They fell upon the first guard like wolves. No cries. Just the wet thump of wood on bone. The hiss of breath through clenched teeth. One man died before he could reach for his horn. Another fled, only to be dragged down by Crassus, who choked him out with a broken spear shaft. The armory was locked. The key, swiped days before, fit with a click that rang louder than any shout. Inside, swords, bucklers, spears, helmets. It was a feast. They did not hesitate. Within minutes, the ludus burned. Flames climbed the walls like climbing ivy. Soot and firelight painted the yard red. Shouts erupted across the city. Bells rang. Watchmen scrambled from their posts, half-dressed and half-sober. But Spartacus and his brothers were already gone, vanishing through the back wall where a drain tunnel led out into the open fields beyond Capua. Behind them, chaos. Ahead of them, unknown. They ran beneath the cover of smoke and shadow, cutting down those who stood in their way. An old woman let them pass at a crossroads, her eyes wide but unjudging. A farmer offered bread and wine without speaking. A shepherd pointed toward the forests near Vesuvius. By morning, they were ash-streaked and bleeding, but free. The sun rose over a land that no longer owned them. Spartacus stood on a hillside, bare-chested, sword in hand, watching the smoke rise from Capua. Around him, the men began to gather, some limping, some laughing, many silent. Gannicus dropped to the ground and kissed the earth. Barca simply stared toward the horizon, jaw clenched. "What now?" someone asked. Spartacus turned, slowly, and looked at them, not as warriors, not as slaves, but as men. "We survive," he said. "And then we live." Part 4, Vesuvius, the seat of a rebellion. Mount Vesuvius loomed like a sentinel of ash and stone, its slopes scarred by ancient fire, its summit often shrouded in cloud. To the farmers and villagers below, it was a sleeping god, dormant, dangerous, unpredictable. To Spartacus and the 70 who followed him, it was sanctuary. The slopes were steep, the terrain rough. The mountain offered no comfort, but it gave cover. Roman patrols dared not scale it. The trees provided shade, the streams trickled clean. From high above, they could watch the roads that wound toward Capua and Naples. They could see the movement of legionaries, the smoke from distant villas, the glow of the Roman world that had enslaved them. They made camp in the rocks, using branches and stolen cloaks for shelter. Food was scarce at first, wild roots, stolen chickens, whatever villagers left out of sympathy or fear. Some nights, the hunger was worse than the cold. But no one complained. They had learned the taste of suffering. And now they had something new. Freedom. The dream did not yet have a name, but it pulsed in every heartbeat. Spartacus wasted no time. He gathered them each morning, running drills in the clearing, gladius stances, shield formations, quick retreats. Not all were born warriors. Some had been house slaves, others field hands. Many had never held a blade until the night they escaped. But they learned. Gannicus led mock duels, turning training into theater. Crassus took the biggest men and broke them down, then built them back up, barking orders like a general. Barca tested their endurance, marching them for miles at dusk, then having them dig trenches by moonlight. And Spartacus watched them all. Not just their strength, but their will. Each had scars. Each had reason. The mountain became more than shelter, it became a forge. And the rumors began to spread. First in whispers, then louder. A gladiator revolt. A war band of escaped slaves. Tales of Roman patrols ambushed in the countryside, villas raided, slave chains shattered. They called Spartacus a phantom, a demon, a king. But none of these names fit. He did not sit on a throne. He slept on stone. He carried water with the others. He broke bread, sparingly, equally. He never asked for loyalty. Only belief. "I am not Rome," he told them one night, as they gathered around a fire built from stolen lumber. "I do not rule by coin or cruelty. You are free to go. But if you stay, we fight together, not as tools, but as brothers." No one left. Soon, others found them. First by accident, slaves who had fled punishment, farmers fleeing taxes, soldiers who had once fought for Rome and now fled her wrath. Then, by purpose. They came by the dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Field slaves with welts across their backs. Quarry workers with broken nails and shattered teeth. Women who had been sold into brothels. Children too young to hold swords, but old enough to carry water and hope. They did not come because they believed they would win. They came because someone had finally said no. Spartacus welcomed them all. And he trained them. In the forests below Vesuvius, crude swords were hammered from plowshares. Spears were carved from cart axles. Shields built from wagon boards and leather. Everything became a weapon. Everything had meaning. The mountain, once silent, now echoed with shouts, laughter, the clash of practice blades. Rome did not take them seriously. At first. A local militia, fat with confidence in old wine, marched to Vesuvius with banners high. They expected a quick slaughter. They brought shackles for recapture. They sneered as they climbed the slopes. None came back down. Spartacus used their own arrogance against them. He led his fighters around the rear trails, attacked at night, and scattered the militia like leaves in a storm. From that moment forward, he was no longer an escaped slave. He was a general. The Senate scoffed. Called them bandits. But villas began to fall, burned or stripped bare. Slave pens were emptied. Gold was redistributed. The rebel army grew. Not in ranks. In spirit. They carried no standard, but their name carried weight. And at its center, Spartacus walked. Never apart. Never above. One night, as fires flickered across the mountain slope, he stood looking down at the valleys beyond. The stars glinted above. Somewhere, far to the north, the Alps waited. Freedom lay beyond them. But the road would not be straight. And the fire had only just begun. Part 5, The Campaign, a War of Ghosts. They called him a shadow. To the Senate, Spartacus was no longer a fugitive or a mere rebel. He was a problem, a phantom whose army moved too quickly, struck too sharply, disappeared too cleanly. Patrols vanished. Villas were stripped bare. Grain shipments were rerouted and never arrived. Rumors claimed his rebels had the favor of the gods. Or the Furies. Or both. But those within the rebellion knew the truth. It wasn't divine. It was strategy. Spartacus understood terrain, movement, and morale better than many Roman generals. He never held a hill he couldn't abandon. Never fought a battle he didn't need to win. He struck where Rome least expected, then vanished into the folds of Italy's wild hills and dark forests. He moved his army not as one block, but in streams, breaking and merging like rivers, flowing around legions and through gaps they didn't see until it was too late. And still they came. Runaways. Farmers. Ex-soldiers disillusioned by Rome's greed. Women who'd lost sons to conscription, men who'd lost everything but their name. In every camp, stories were shared. I saw Spartacus lift a burning log with his bare hands to save a boy from the fire. He speaks to the gods in his sleep. He wept when an old woman died from cold. Most stories were false. Some were true. But all carried the same message: this was not just a fight. It was a reckoning. They became a people. The rebel host swelled to tens of thousands. No longer a band of gladiators, but a society on the move. They built temporary towns in the woods, with markets and kitchens and watchtowers. They patrolled their own roads, collected food, made alliances with villagers who hated their Roman landlords. At night, their camps flickered with fires that looked from a distance like entire cities. Spartacus walked the rows each evening, wrapped in a tattered cloak. He asked names. He shared meals. He listened to widows. He lifted children onto his shoulders and let them laugh. He was not a king. He made that clear. No crown, he said. No throne. We rise together or not at all. Some pushed for monarchy. 4 titles. He refused them. That refusal made him more powerful than any crown. Even the women fought. A group of escaped priestesses from Campania, their hands calloused by work and pain, formed a unit of slingers. They became known as the Daughters of Ash. Children carried messages between units, hid food in caves, led scouts through goat trails. The rebellion was no longer male or military. It was human. Rome sent militia after militia. Each fell. Then the Senate sent consular armies. 2 legions, commanded by men of ancient name and little talent, trapped Spartacus near Picenum. But he outmaneuvered them, led a nighttime feint, then turned and crushed them in daylight. The battlefield was littered with the standards of Rome. They burned them, and in their place, raised a simple banner, a black field with no emblem. No empire. No master. Just the space for something new. The cost. Victory had its toll. With each triumph, the rebel host grew, but so did its burden. Feeding thousands. Protecting civilians. Training the untrained. Punishing looters. Keeping order among those who had never known it without chains. Spartacus's face grew thinner. He slept less. Spoke less. His eyes darkened, not from cruelty, but from the knowledge of what was coming. He knew Rome would adapt. And it did. Crassus entered the scene. Ruthless. Calculating. He was not a general of honor, but of outcomes. He brought 6 legions and no illusions. He cut no deals. He crucified deserters in his own army. He offered no terms to the rebels. He built a wall, a massive trench and earthwork that spanned a toe of Italy, trapping Spartacus's army in the south like a beast in a cage. But Spartacus would not be caged. He waited for storm season, then ordered rafts built from stolen timber. They launched under cloud and wind, crossing the straits by moonlight. Some perished. Others reached the other side. The dream endured. But cracks had begun to show. Crassus, ever the firebrand, broke off with tens of thousands. He craved a final battle. Spartacus begged him to wait. Crassus would not. He fell near Apulia. Spartacus found his body himself. He did not speak that day. He simply knelt in the grass, laid his hand on Crassus's chest, and whispered something no one could hear. Then he rose and led his army north again, toward the Alps, toward escape. But the mountains were far. And betrayal waited in every valley. Part 6, The Fracture, Pride, Loss, and Betrayal. The road to the Alps narrowed through rocky terrain and winding forests, each bend a trap waiting to be sprung. But Spartacus pressed on, leading a force that had once surged like a tide, now fragmented, frayed at the edges. The death of Crassus still clung to him like smoke. They had fought beside each other since Capua, opposites in every way. Crassus was the fire, the shout, the unbreakable hammer. Spartacus had been the eye of the storm. But their bond had held. Until the split. Crassus had craved glory. Spartacus had wanted freedom. But in war, lines blur. In grief, they vanish. The army held moments of silence for the fallen Gaul. On the morning after his burial, Spartacus climbed a hillside and addressed the gathered ranks. He fought not for applause, but for vengeance, he said. We honor him best not with tears, but with fire. And so they burned a Roman estate that morning, taking grain and gold, and leaving its banners in ashes. But the wound ran deeper. Some among the rebels began to murmur. Why not strike Rome directly? Why flee? Why not become what they fear? One ex-soldier spat. Why not rule? Spartacus heard it all. He did not lash out. But each whisper chipped at the unity he'd bled to hold together. He dreamed of the Alps, green passes, cold air, freedom. Yet every mile north was another argument. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted land. Others wanted gold. Fewer and fewer remembered why they had followed him to begin with. And then came Sicily. The island had always been a dream within the dream. Rich in grain. Populated by tens of thousands of slaves. If they could reach it, Spartacus believed, they could ignite an even greater fire, one that Rome could never extinguish. They bargained with pirates from Cilicia, rough men with salt in their beards and betrayal in their eyes. Spartacus offered gold. They nodded, shook hands, took payment. And vanished. No ships came. Only silence. And another broken promise. Spartacus didn't speak for a day and a night. He walked the beach alone, letting the waves bite at his heels. Some said they saw him scream into the wind. Others saw him drop to his knees and whisper her name, his wife's name. No one dared ask which was true. He returned quieter, graver. The lines in his face had deepened. A hardness entered his voice that hadn't been there before. He ordered a retreat inland. There was no other path left. But even retreat, now, felt like betrayal. A Gallic faction, hot-headed and drunk on stolen wine, refused the new orders. They deserted in the night, taking with them hundreds of fighters and precious supplies. Spartacus watched them go, jaw tight. He did not chase them. He could not afford to. He focused on those who remained. He split the army into smaller companies, more nimble, better for ambushes. He trained again, sharper, harsher. The luxury of unity was gone. Now it was survival. Even in this fractured state, the rebellion did damage. Roman caravans vanished. Forts were sacked. A magistrate was found bound in chains, alive, left on the road for his peers to find. And still, they moved. Like ghosts. Like wolves. But something had changed. Gone were the songs by the fires. Gone were the stories of forests and feasts. Even Gannicus, once the mouth of the camp, fell quiet. He drank more. Fought harder. But laughed less. The rebellion had become a storm with no center. And Spartacus? He carried it alone. He still spoke each night to the troops, simple words, never lies. Freedom has a cost. We pay it with every step. They listened. But belief was harder now. Thinner. And yet, each morning, they rose and followed. Because even fractured, even betrayed, even tired, he was still Spartacus. He still walked beside them. He still burned. Part 7, The Final Stand, Glory and Ash. The grass whispered. That morning, before the sky had fully broken into light, Spartacus stood alone at the edge of the clearing, where the dew clung to every blade of wildflower and wheat. Below him, the open plain stretched wide and still, too quiet. A silence that felt like breath held between worlds. In the distance, across the field, the banners of Rome flickered. Crimson and gold. 6 legions, hardened by discipline and commanded by a man who saw every battle as a staircase to power, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Spartacus had studied the man. Knew his hunger. Knew he wouldn't settle for victory. He would demand obliteration. Not just of men, but of memory. And so Spartacus prepared, not for victory, but for truth. He walked the lines as the morning deepened. No shining armor, no chariot. Just leather, steel, and the scars of 100 fights. His army waited, not neat ranks, not drilled perfection, but people who had survived the impossible and were ready to die standing. Some sharpened blades. Others kissed lovers, children, brothers. Many said nothing at all. They already knew. This is not the end, Spartacus said, standing before them. Not if we die as men. Not if we meet them with fire in our eyes. He did not promise deliverance. He offered dignity. He offered the one thing Rome could never steal. We fight for the breath in our lungs, the blood in our hearts. We fight for each other. A cheer rose, not loud, but deep. Like thunder from the bones of the earth. Then came the march. Across the plain, Rome waited with ranks gleaming, shields locked, discipline carved into every movement. Trumpets called. Spears readied. Crassus, watching from his hilltop, raised his hand. The storm broke. The two armies met with the roar of worlds colliding, steel on steel, cries that split the air, the earth trembling beneath the weight of defiance. Spartacus led the charge, cutting through the first wave like a blade through grain. He fought without pause. Without fear. Every swing of his gladius was an act of memory, of Crassus, of Barca, of his wife whose face he now saw clearly, her eyes steady, her smile bright. He carved his way toward the Roman center, through lines of shields and spears. Beside him, Gannicus fought like a flame unleashed, bleeding from the shoulder but laughing like a god. They reached the third line before the sky closed in. A javelin pierced Spartacus's thigh. He fell to one knee. A Roman lunged, he rose and drove his sword through the man's chest. Then a spear found his shoulder. He staggered. Still he stood. His men rallied to him, forming a circle as Rome tightened its noose. He shouted not commands, but a cry of defiance, of finality. Then another blow. And another. He sank, finally, to the bloodied grass. The battle surged around him. Shouts blurred into silence. The sun dimmed behind smoke and dust. He saw Crassus, far away, expression unreadable. Spartacus tried to rise. Failed. Then, lying among those who believed, he closed his eyes. His body was never found. Some say it was hidden by loyal hands. Others say it was left on the field, unburied, unnamed, just another corpse beneath Roman steel. But what Rome did find was fear. Crassus, ever efficient, lined the Appian Way with 6,000 crucified bodies, mile after mile of broken men. A message in flesh. A warning. But warnings can fade. And symbols, they endure. In taverns and kitchens, across distant provinces, the name Spartacus became whisper and flame. Painted on walls. Spoken in dreams. Passed from slave to slave, father to child. Not as myth, but as possibility. Part 8, Epilogue, the fire that never died. Rome burned the names. It silenced the survivors. It crucified the dream. And yet, Spartacus lived on. Not in marble statues or triumphal processions. Not in official histories. But in the whispers beneath the floorboards, in the graffiti scratched behind tavern walls, in the breath of a woman rocking her child in the dark, whispering a name she dared not say aloud. Spartacus. The Senate tried to erase him. They wrote of him as a criminal, a savage, a mistake. But somewhere, a field slave hummed a song about a man who broke his chains. A child carved a figure in softwood, a man with no crown, holding a sword in one hand and nothing in the other, because he fought not for gold but for others. Years passed. Decades. Crassus rose, fell, and was forgotten. New emperors came, then vanished into dust and rumor. The empire shifted, fractured, collapsed. But the flame remained. It passed in secret. From voice to voice. From heartbeat to heartbeat. Not just in Rome. Across oceans and centuries. Every time a captive rebelled. Every time a tyrant fell. Every time someone stood, however briefly, and said, "No more," Spartacus rose again. Not as man. As symbol. As spark. His body was lost. But his story became unlosable. Even now, beneath quiet stars, in cities far from Italy's hills, someone remembers. A line in a book. A verse in a song. A name passed down. And in the deepest part of the night, when the world feels too heavy and freedom too far, something stirs. A memory. A whisper. You are not chained. Not in soul. You are not alone. You can rise. And so the fire that Spartacus lit so long ago still burns, not in the ruins of Rome, but in the defiance of every heart that dares to dream of more. Chapter 3, The Mystery of the Mithraic Cult. Part 1, Prologue, The Sealed Shrine. The stone is cool beneath your palm, though the sun beats heavy upon your back. Time has chewed the marble edges of the forum into weary curves, and vines snake through once perfect joints like nature's quiet reclamation. You stand before the remnants of a doorway now half swallowed by earth. To any passerby, it is nothing, just a shadowed alcove beneath a ruined warehouse wall. But you know better. You remember. 40 years ago, you descended into this place with your head bowed and heart pounding, a soldier fresh from the Rhine, unsure whether this was a joke, a test, or a trap. You recall the torches, the masks, the heat of breath on your neck as chants rose in a language half familiar, half foreign. You remember the blindfold. The scent of ash and oil. The name whispered in reverence, Mithras. Now, the entrance is sealed with rubble and silence. The Mithraeum is buried, not just in soil, but in memory. The empire above has changed. Constantine rules. Crosses glint where once the eagle soared. The old gods are fading, condemned by decree, swallowed by rising churches and imperial suspicion. In the baths and the streets, they mock the mysteries that once bound you. They call them childish, pagan, dangerous. They do not understand. You place your other hand on the wall. The stone is pitted and worn, but a line of red pigment remains, faint, but still there. A curve from a fresco. The tail of a scorpion, perhaps. Or the hem of a celestial robe. You close your eyes and see it all again. The chamber alive with flickering light. The bull. The blade. The brothers in silence. You hear the low hum of the chant vibrating in your chest, even now. You are old. The scars on your hands ache more than they used to. The armor you wore once hangs on a peg in your son's home, dulled by dust and neglect. Your wife believes you worshipped the sun, and in a way, you did. But only as a reflection of something deeper. Something carved in blood and belief beneath the earth. It was never about conquest. Not truly. Not for you. It was about memory. About meaning. You draw a finger down the edge of the blocked archway, tracing the path you once walked. The ground hums with echoes, your footsteps, your oaths, your youth. You were not born for faith. You were forged into it, hammered like iron in fire, until the ritual made you more than a man. You were a soldier, yes. But here, in the dark, in the secret, you became a brother. A whisper rises on the wind, curling through the alley like a ghost returned. It might be nothing. A breath of heat from the afternoon streets. But it sounds like the beginning of a chant, low and rhythmic, like boots in step or hearts in unison. You open your eyes. The shrine is still buried. The stone's still sealed. But you are not alone. Not entirely. And even here, above ground, beneath the weight of age and silence, you feel it, just faintly, the torch still burning. Part 2, The Descent. It began with a whisper. Not from the lips of men, but from something older, beneath the clamor of the forum, below the shouts of vendors hawking dates and fish, deeper than the rattle of legionnaire boots on stone. It came when you first stood before the unmarked door, a plain slab of wood shadowed by the overhang of a crumbling insula near the Capitoline hill. The man beside you, a fellow soldier from your cohort, offered no explanation. Just a nod. A knock. Then silence. When the door creaked open, the man inside wore no uniform. No crest. No jewelry. Just a coarse robe cinched at the waist and a gaze that burned, not like fire, but like cold iron. He said only one word. Descend. You followed him without protest. A soldier's body obeys before the mind questions. Down a narrow stone stair that wound tighter than any watchtower spiral. Your shoulders brushed wet walls. The scent of olive oil and damp clay thickened with each step. No sunlight followed you. Only torchlight, golden, trembling, alive. The noise above dimmed to a murmur, then vanished entirely, as if you had fallen through the skin of the world. When you reached the bottom, the chamber opened like a long inhaling. The air was cool and still, but not empty. It was as though the space itself breathed. Shadow clung to the carved stone ribs of the ceiling, which arched above you like the inside of a beast's chest. pillars flanked either side of the long nave. At the far end, a relief loomed in dim light, a bull, its head yanked back, eyes wide. A man atop it, young, strong, serene, plunged a dagger into its neck. Around them, a dog licked at the blood. A serpent coiled along the flank. A scorpion clawed at the bull's genitals. Your heart stilled. You knew of no such gods. And yet you felt watched. Not with malice, but with measure. Judged, not for your rank, nor your deeds in war, but for something deeper. The man who led you said nothing. He merely walked the length of the chamber and lit a second torch. As the flame flared, you saw them, other men, seated along stone benches lining the sides of the chamber. Hooded. Silent. Their faces hidden by masks carved in the likenesses of beasts, a lion. A raven. A serpent. A man with a sunburst crown. No names were spoken. No greetings exchanged. Your guide handed you a cloth, a blindfold. Still, not a word. You hesitated only once. But only once. Then you knelt. A pair of unseen hands took the cloth and tied it gently around your eyes. The torchlight vanished. In its place, a voice, low and rhythmic, like a tide just beyond reach, began to chant. A language you recognized only in part. Not Latin. Not Greek. Older. Each word struck like a hammer, measured, precise. Oil, warm and fragrant, poured over your hands. Not enough to burn. Just enough to consecrate. You felt hands on your shoulders, firm but not cruel. A touch on your brow, and the press of something cold against your chest, metal, perhaps, or stone. Then, for the first time, you heard the name. Not your own. His. Mithras. The word filled your ears like thunder held in a whisper. The chamber seemed to pulse with it. The chant swelled. Something primal stirred within you, not belief, not yet, but the hunger for it. The need. When the blindfold was removed, the chamber was changed. The torches blazed brighter. The relief glowed as if backlit by hidden fire. The figures on the benches had risen. They stood with masks tilted forward, the light catching in the hollows of their eyes. The scent of smoke, sweat, and oil filled your nose. Your tunic clung to your skin. You did not speak. You did not need to. You had descended. And in doing so, you had begun the long journey, not into worship, but into mystery. Part 3, the first ritual. The chamber was silent now, except for the hiss of torch flame and the steady, unified breath of the assembled brothers. You remained kneeling, eyes fixed on the bull's eternal death at the far end of the hall. Mithras' blade frozen in stone, the blood forever spilling, the stars forever watching. You knew, even then, that you were witnessing something older than empire, older than language. The man in the lion mask stepped forward. He carried no weapons. No scrolls. Only a shallow bowl, darkened by soot, and a strip of cloth knotted at both ends. He knelt before you, and though his face was hidden, you felt his gaze burn through the slits of the mask like the eyes of a beast weighing your soul. He reached into the bowl and drew out ash, still warm from the embers, mixed with oil. With 2 fingers, he marked your forehead. A single line down. Then one across. A cross, yes, but not the Christian kind. This was the mark of fire and burden. A crossroads. A beginning. Another stepped forward, this one with the mask of a raven. He whispered a phrase too soft to catch, and then tied the knotted cloth around your upper arm. A band. A binding. It was not tight, but it throbbed with every beat of your pulse, a rhythm that would not let you forget where you were. Then came the final moment. The lion and the raven raised you to your feet, not roughly, but with weight, like they were lifting more than a man. Like they were lifting a question. You stood. Your knees trembled, not from fear, but from something else. Expectation. The weight of knowing you were stepping across an invisible line, one that could not be uncrossed. A low chant began, and this time, you joined it. Not because you understood. but because you needed to belong. The words vibrated in your chest, curling through your ribs like smoke. The other brothers stepped forward, forming a circle around you. Their masks were the faces of myth, dog, serpent, bull, man crowned with rays. As they circled, one passed behind and laid a hand on your shoulder. Another pressed a torch into your hand. Its handle was rough and warm, and the flame flared when you gripped it. You were not told what to do. You simply knew. You turned to face the altar, the great relief of Mithras slaying the bull. A voice echoed from the shadows. Who brings life through death? Your throat closed. You tried to speak, but your tongue had forgotten how. The voice came again. Who brings order to the stars? Still no answer. Then the raven stepped forward and whispered into your ear. You repeated after him. Mithras. The torch in your hand flared higher. The flame grew wild and gold, casting animal shadows across the stone. The bullseye in the relief gleamed wetly, as if weeping. The blood from the dagger wound seemed to shimmer. Another voice, this one closer, heavier, like earth itself, asked. Will you walk the path? You nodded. Will you suffer to see? You hesitated, but nodded again. Will you hold the fire? The torch burned brighter. Your hand blistered, but you did not drop it. Then you were raven. And just like that, the ceremony was complete. You had taken the first grade. A brother stepped forward and removed the cloth from your arm. He replaced it with a woven band dyed black, the symbol of the raven stitched in silver thread, a bird in flight, beak open in silent song. He placed it on your upper arm with great care, and for the first time, you saw the man's eyes behind the mask. They were tired. But they were proud. The circle broke. The chant faded. The torches dimmed, one by one. You stood alone in the center of the chamber, the relief of Mithras casting a long shadow over you. In the weeks to come, you would learn that there were 6 more grades. Each more secretive than the last. Each more demanding. But for now, you were raven. You were reborn. Not in water, nor in blood, but in mystery. You were not asked to abandon the gods of your childhood. Nor to forsake Rome. But you were asked to remember. To carry the flame. To protect the silence. And to kneel, not to emperors or commanders, but to something deeper. To Mithras. Part 4, The Brotherhood. You came back the next week. And the week after. It wasn't commanded. There were no legates or centurions keeping tally. No punishment if you failed to appear. But you returned, drawn by something you couldn't name. Not duty. Not even curiosity. It was hunger. Not of the flesh, but of the spirit. Each time you descended, the noise of Rome fell away. The chaos of the marketplace, the heat of politics, the weight of imperial orders, all vanished like smoke. In its place, the quiet breath of the underworld greeted you. The scent of oil and dust, the creak of leather soles on stone. The occasional cough. The hush of men waiting, not as soldiers, not as citizens, but as initiates. You learned the names, not of the men, but of their ranks. They were not Paul or Marcus or Lucius. They were bridegroom. Lion. Father. Not all were soldiers. One, you came to know, was a merchant from Cappadocia. Another, a freedman who once served in a senator's household. The rights didn't care for wealth or station. Only belief. And silence. In the Mithraeum, everyone was equal, equal before Mithras, equal beneath the stars. You learned to lie on your side, shoulder to shoulder with the others, eating roasted lamb and flatbread soaked in wine. The meals were quiet, reverent, and intimate. You spoke only in low tones, if at all, heads bowed to the flickering relief of Mithras in the bull. No serving slaves. No silver platters. Just warmth, firelight, and shared understanding. Sometimes a father would recite a tale, never from a scroll, always from memory. He was born from stone, you know, one said, his voice gravel smooth with age. The rock cracked open like an egg, and there he stood, naked, sword in hand, wearing a Phrygian cap. No mother. No father. Just Mithras, already whole, already chosen. You came to know these stories by heart. Not because you were required to, but because they lived inside you. The tales felt carved into your bones. They didn't feel new, they felt remembered. One night, after the meal, the lion invited you to sit closer to the altar. You obeyed. He pointed to the ceiling, where faint pigments still clung to the stone in curves and spirals. See them? He asked. The stars. The constellations. You squinted. Gradually, your eyes adjusted. Aries. Taurus. Scorpio. Capricorn. And in the center, a painted sun, haloed in gold. The bull is Taurus. The scorpion at its groin is Scorpio. The dog and the serpent, they too are stars. The story is written above us, if we know how to read it. You nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling its truth. Mithras did not just kill the bull, he continued. He liberated the life inside it. The blood became the rivers. The tail, the grain. From its breath came the winds. He did not destroy. He transformed. You felt something shift inside you then. A soft click in the lock of your mind. The world outside was filled with laws and power, emperors and taxes, gods that stood distant on marble altars. But here, beneath the earth, you felt something living. Something present. You began to change. Slowly. Not so anyone above would notice. Your temper cooled. Your silences grew longer. You listened more. You watched the movement of stars with new attention, tracing their nightly drift like the slow turning of a hidden clock. When a new initiate was blindfolded and brought in, you watched his journey with compassion, remembering your own trembling knees, the burn of the torch handle in your hand. You helped guide him through the rite, not with words, but with presence. With steadiness. You were now part of the current. Part of the silence. One night, as you lay beside your brothers after a shared feast, wine warming your belly and the flicker of torches painting golden shapes on the wall, you realized something with sudden, quiet certainty. You had never belonged anywhere until now. Not in the barracks. Not in the camps. Not even in your family home, where your father measured worth in denarii and your mother waited in obedience. But here in the dark, amid stone and ash and sacred blood, you were seen. Not for what you had done, but for what you were becoming. Part 5, Myth and Meaning. You were taught to follow orders, not question them. To strike before asking. To win or die. Rome's gods were tools, invoked before battle, thanked with incense when fortune smiled. They guarded rivers, gates, crops. They demanded respect, but not love. Mithras was different. He did not ask for obedience. He demanded understanding, and offered no clear path to reach it. Weeks turned to months. The chamber became a second home. You could now see in its dimness as if the stone itself whispered where to walk. You knew how to light the torches so the bull's face caught shadow in just the right way. You learned the rituals by memory, when to bow, when to chant, when to listen. But there were still things that eluded you. Why a bull? Why the dagger? Why the scorpion at the bull's groin, the dog licking the blood, the serpent curling at its belly? Each element felt deliberate. Charged with meaning. But no one explained. When you asked, the lion simply smiled beneath his mask and said, if the answer were given, it would lose its power. So you watched. And you listened. And slowly, the stories began to change you. They said Mithras was born from rock. That he emerged from the earth itself, a symbol of resilience, of uncreated creation. No mother. No father. No lineage. He simply was. They said he was called by the sun, not to serve, but to dine. The two met in a sacred meal, side by side, god and demigod, drinking from the same bowl. Mithras did not worship the sun. He befriended it. They shared fire. Then came the bull. You heard several versions. That it was a wild beast Mithras chased for days. That he carried it alive on his shoulders to a hidden cave. That he wept as he drew the blade. That the bull's death was not a killing, but a release. That from death, life bloomed. From the bull's blood, wheat, vines, water, wind. From its breath, the stars. From its pain, the rhythm of time. The myths never matched word for word. No single telling was complete. It was not the story itself that mattered, it was how it lived inside you. Some said the tale was about the heavens. That the tauroctony, the bull slaying, was an allegory. That Mithras was the sun moving through the zodiac. That the dog was Canis Major. The serpent, Hydra. The scorpion, Scorpio. That the whole ritual chamber was a map of the sky, frozen in stone. Others said it was about the soul. That the bull was the beast within. That Mithras was the higher self, struggling, resisting, but ultimately overcoming. That from this inner death came rebirth. Still others whispered that it was about Rome itself. That the empire required sacrifice. That strength and order came only from conquest, from blood spilled for unity. But deep down, you knew it was something even older than Rome. Something older than the gods. It was the knowledge that death was not the end. That sacrifice could create meaning. That the stars spun overhead not as decoration, but as message. One night, after a ritual, you remained in the chamber long after the others left. The torches burned low, shadows pooling in the corners. You lay on your back, staring up at the faded constellations painted on the ceiling. They seemed to move, not literally, but in your mind. They traced circles. Patterns. A great wheel. Time itself. And in the center of it all, the calm, eternal face of Mithras. You whispered his name. Mithras. And in that moment, you didn't ask for anything. You simply gave thanks. Not because you understood, but because you believed one day you might. You were no longer the same man who descended those stairs in silence. You had seen the ritual death of the bull. You had shared bread beside masked strangers. You had watched the stars speak in riddles. You had been called Raven, and one day, if you endured, you would become Lion. But more than any of that, you had found meaning in the mystery. Part 6, Conflict and Threat. It began as a whisper, like all great ends do. A merchant brother, once steady and jovial, arrived to the Mithraeum late one evening, his face drawn, his voice hushed. He had heard it from a client in the forum, a new edict had passed. One that spoke of unauthorized gatherings. Of hidden shrines. Of dangerous superstitions. No names were mentioned in the law. But you knew. Others began to speak of Christians, not in contempt, but in caution. Their followers multiplied daily. Once hunted, now protected. Their bishops sat close to power. Their churches climbed like vines over the old marble bones of Jupiter and Mars. Soldiers now swore oaths on crosses, not standards. Pagan was no longer a belief. It was becoming a crime. The fathers said little. But one night, during the ritual meal, there was no story. No myth. Instead, the eldest among them stood and spoke quietly. There will come a time, he said, when these walls are sealed. When our names are forgotten. When this flame is smothered by another. Not by hate. But by fear. He looked down the rows of silent men, some veterans, some scholars, some still boys. If that time comes, do not despair. For Mithras is not the stone. Not the altar. Not even the rites. He is what endures when all else is broken. Carry him inside. You didn't speak of it afterward. Not aloud. But the change was undeniable. The chamber was still the same torches, same bull, same constellations, but something had shifted in the air. As if time had begun to notice you. As if the silence you once revered now carried the weight of finality. Then, one day, the raven did not return. You had known him briefly, an initiate younger than you, fresh from Antioch, sharp-eyed and soft-spoken. He had only just received his grade. But he missed 2 gatherings. Then 3. At the 4th, word came, arrested. His crime? Unknown. But someone had seen him leave the chamber. Someone had followed. It was enough. The following week, a father sealed one of the entrances. The narrow stair at the rear of the Mithraeum, once an escape route during riots, was now blocked by mortar and brick. The brothers said nothing. But when the torch passed hand to hand that night, the flame trembled more than usual. You began to change your cloak each week. Covered your face when descending side streets. You never wore your grade band in the open. And yet, you still returned. Because the fear that chased you outside could not reach you down here. And if this was to be the end, then you would walk it to the edge, unflinching. But it wasn't courage. It was loyalty. Not to a state. Not to an emperor. To your brothers. And to him. One night, after the ritual, a lion pulled you aside. His voice was low, steady. They're watching the old temples now. They call us idolaters. Sorcerers. You nodded. He continued. Some of us may flee. Others will stay. But wherever you go, take the flame. The chant. The myth. Pass it quietly. Share it only with those who prove worthy. Never write it. Never speak it aloud unless you are sure. The world does not understand us anymore. You looked him in the eye. Will it ever again? The lion's reply was a whisper, more breath than sound. No. But it doesn't need to. He placed a hand on your shoulder. What we carry was never meant for the many. Only the faithful. That night, as you exited through the last open stairwell, you caught a glimpse of a patrol watching from afar. No words were exchanged. But their eyes followed you like torches in the dark. You didn't sleep that night. And for the first time, you wondered if Mithras would abandon you. But when you closed your eyes, you saw him, not in judgment, but in stillness. Blade raised. Bowl beneath. Stars whirling in the heavens. And you knew. He had already passed through darkness. And called you to follow. Part 7, The Shuddering. It happened with no warning. No riot. No decree nailed to the door. Just silence. You arrived before dawn, as always, your cloak pulled tight, your feet memorizing every twist of the alley. The city was still asleep, its streets echoing with the occasional bark of a dog or the clatter of distant carts. But when you reached the hidden entrance, there was nothing. The door was gone. Bricked over. Seamless. As though it had never existed. Your breath caught. Not in fear, but in grief. You reached out, pressing your palm to where the wood had once been. Smooth stone. Cold. Final. A scrap of cloth hung from a nail high above, red, faded, fluttering in the breeze. You recognized it immediately, the hem of a ritual sash, deliberately torn. A signal. Do not return. You stood there for a long time. A passerby glanced at you, then away. Just another tired veteran staring at a wall. But you were saying goodbye. That night, you didn't return home. Instead, you wandered through the city, your steps unanchored. Rome felt louder now. Harder. The temples above were crowded with candles and singing, the scent of frankincense thick in the air. Crosses carved into marble. Priests wearing white. Public prayers spoken aloud. And yet, nothing felt sacred. Not like before. Not like below. In the weeks that followed, the brotherhood dispersed. You heard whispers, the lion had fled to Gaul. The raven had vanished into Syria. The old father, your teacher, your guide, was said to have died quietly in his villa, alone. You kept their names alive only in memory. No scroll bore them. No carving. No grave. Just images, a sunburst mask. A hand passing bread. A voice reciting myth in the firelight. You thought, for a time, of building a new chamber. But where? And with whom? The world had shifted. It did not want your mysteries anymore. You buried your grade band deep in the floor beneath your home, wrapped in oiled cloth, beside the torch you once carried. And yet, every so often, when the sky was clear and the constellations traced the wheel of time overhead, you felt the urge return, to speak the chant. To whisper his name. Mithras. You resisted at first. Out of fear. But fear was not the bond that had ever held you to the brotherhood. It was belief. So one night, years after the chamber was sealed, you invited your son to walk with you to a nearby field outside the city. He was still a boy then, with questions etched into his brow and strength just beginning to settle in his shoulders. You pointed to the stars. See that one? That's the bull. And near his neck, that shimmer? The blade. That one? He asked, eyes wide. The scorpion? Yes, you whispered, your voice distant with memory. There's a story. You told him the myth, not as a sermon, but as a tale. A memory. A thread pulled from the tapestry of your life. You left out the rituals. The grades. The oaths. But the essence? That you passed on. Why did he kill the bull? Your son asked. To bring life, you replied. To feed the world. That's sad, he said. It is, you nodded. And beautiful. He didn't understand. Not fully. But that was all right. He would remember. And that was enough. Part 8, The Memory. You are old now. The sword that once hung at your hip rests rusted beneath linen in a chest you no longer open. Your back aches in the mornings, your knees protest every hill. The Rome of your youth is gone, buried beneath marble churches and imperial edicts. Statues of Jupiter have fallen. Temples of Saturn lie empty. The gods you once feared now linger only in dust and legend. But one has never left you. Not Mithras. He returns in dreams. Not as a vision, not a thunderous deity demanding worship, but as memory. Subtle. Felt rather than seen. In the silence between breaths. In the hush before dawn. In the soft crunch of your footsteps across frost-covered ground as you walk alone, far from the city, to a hill where no walls rise and no crosses hang. You lie on your back in the grass, staring upward. The stars move slowly. As they always have. As they always will. You can still find them, the bull, the scorpion, the dog, the snake. They've faded behind the glow of torches and prayers spoken in strange new tongues, but they're still there. Eternal. And in that great circle above you, you see him again. Mithras. His face is calm, young. His blade held high. The bull beneath him, not resisting, not afraid. All around, the heavens spiral, order from chaos, time from stillness, life from death. You whisper his name, not as a plea, not as a ritual, but as a greeting. Brother. You close your eyes. And you remember. You remember the descent, the cool steps beneath the city, the scent of oil, the torchlight dancing on carved stone. You remember the hush before the chant, the weight of your own heartbeat in your ears. You remember the ash on your brow. The oil on your hands. The animal masks looming in shadow. The flame passed from one soul to another. A silence more sacred than any scripture. You remember the meals, laughter beneath the chants, the warmth of brothers beside you on the stone benches, sharing meat, bread, and wine without judgment or rank. You remember the stories. The stars. The mysteries no one could explain and no one needed to. You remember the closing, the sealed stone, the scattered kin, the day Rome turned its back on the old ways. And yet, despite all that was lost, one truth remains. You were a soldier once. But far more than that, you were a brother. You carried no scrolls, no holy relics, no carved commandments. You carried only the fire. And even now, bent with age, breath thin, eyes clouded, you feel it flickering inside you. Steady. Quiet. Undying. The chant still echoes in the blood. The bond still holds in the silence. The torch still passes on. Even in the dark. Chapter 4, Life in a Roman Senator's Villa. Part 1, Prologue, The Stillness Before Dawn. The first breath of dawn has not yet touched the city. Rome sleeps. But within the walls of your domus, the day has already begun. The atrium lies quiet, its polished marble glinting faintly in the lamplight. From the oculus above, the stars still peer through the open sky, fading, fragile in the presence of approaching light. A cool breeze drifts in from the garden beyond, carrying with it the mingled scents of fig leaves, crushed lavender, and lingering myrrh. Somewhere deep within the house, a fountain murmurs to itself, rhythmic, timeless, like the pulse of a sleeping beast. You lie awake, eyes open, long before the call of duty demands it. Not out of worry, not quite. Not yet. This is habit. Ritual. A senator of Rome rises before Rome herself. The room is cloaked in the soft glow of bronze oil lamps, their flames swaying slightly with each breath of air. The sheets around you are linen, fine and cool, the faint impression of your wife's sleep-warmed body still etched beside you. She has already stirred, likely gone to the side chamber where her slaves attend to her hair and jewelry. The villa has many rooms, too many to count, but even in this silence, you know where she is. You always do. A light knock. You speak no word, but the door opens, soundless, and a young slave enters with practiced grace. He carries a basin of scented water, steam rising gently from the silver rim, and a folded towel of Egyptian cotton. Another follows behind him, kneeling as he lays out your garments for the morning, a clean tunic, soft and white, and beside it, the heavy folds of your toga, laid out like a banner before a march. You sit up. No command is needed. Your hands are washed in silence. The water smells of rose and crushed bay. The warmth soothes the stiffness in your knuckles, another reminder that you are no longer young. The boy dries your fingers with careful attention, not daring to meet your eyes. You rise. Another slave moves to open the shutters, and with a creak of wood and iron, the city beyond is revealed, not yet alive, but waiting. In the distance, domed rooftops and colonnades pierce the horizon, silhouetted in shadow. Already you can hear the faint rattle of cartwheels on paving stones, the occasional bark of a dog, the distant clang of a blacksmith at the forum's edge. But inside the villa, the world is still. This is the moment you cherish most, the breath before the day, the hush before power moves. In this brief silence, the weight of the empire seems bearable. You walk barefoot across the mosaic floor, the chill of stone climbing up through your bones. Beneath your feet, Neptune rides a chariot of seahorses, eternally frozen in colored tiles. His gaze follows you, calm and commanding, as if to remind you of your own domain, not of oceans, but of influence. Of landowners. Of governors. Of clients who bend the knee in your atrium each morning, waiting to be acknowledged. In the peristyle garden, beyond the colonnade, torches flicker softly. The gardener has already lit them. You can hear the rustle of palm leaves, the faint patter of water dripping from a marble cherub's fingers. The scent of night-blossoming pomegranates still clings to the air. This villa is not simply a home. It is a statement. A temple of order amidst chaos. And you are its high priest. Your day will be long. The Senate will gather. Debates will turn to accusations. Favors will be asked. Promises will be made. Enemies will smile with honeyed venom. Your name will rise, or it will fall, on the strength of a sentence. But that is for later. Now, in this breath before sunrise, in this cradle of stillness, you remember who you are. A senator. A husband. A father. A Roman. And Rome does not sleep forever. Part 2, The Morning Ritual. The tunic slides over your shoulders like a second skin, crisp linen scented faintly of lemon and smoke from the cedar chests. Slaves work wordlessly around you. One cinches the belt, adjusting the fold so that the fabric falls in stately lines. Another steps forward with the toga, draping it with precise turns and tucks. The fabric is heavy, ceremonial, more armor than clothing. Its pure white speaks of dignity, citizenship, and public responsibility. Wearing it is not comfort. It is declaration. The final touch, a signet ring slipped onto your finger, its engraved lion's head catching the morning light. You flex your hand, testing its familiar weight. Through the tablinum, the central office of your villa, sunlight now pours in through high windows. It strikes your collection of scrolls and wax tablets laid neatly on the central desk. These are the day's first demands. Missives from clients, petitions from estate managers, a sternly worded note from a rival senator with whom you share a boundary dispute in Capua. You glance at them, but do not yet sit. Not now. Not before breakfast. In the dining room, the table is already laid out in simple elegance. A low couch awaits your reclining form. Musicians in the corner tune a lyre and a flute, the gentle hum of strings winding fills the space like birdsong. You recognize the lead player, an older Greek with a talent for restraint. His music never oversteps. It complements. Like all good things in Rome. Breakfast is not lavish, but deliberate. A silver tray offers honeyed dates, sprinkled with ground pistachios. Spiced bread still warm from the kitchen rests beside a dish of olives. A slave pours watered wine into a glass cup with steady hands, never spilling, never speaking. You recline, sandals removed. The marble under your heels is cool and veined like ice. You tear a piece of bread, dip it into honey, and taste the sweetness with slow appreciation. A senator must appear in control, not merely of others, but of himself. No rushed bites. No spilled crumbs. Every movement is composure. Every gesture a message. Your steward arrives, an elderly freedman named Petronius, who has served your house for over 2 decades. He carries a tablet and stylus, ready for dictation. Reports from Sicily, he begins. The olive yields are lower than forecast. There's word of bandits harassing the outlying vineyards. Gaius Tullius requests an increase in guard pay. You nod. Approve it. Send a response that will be monitoring his accounts more closely. There is also a delegation from the Builders Guild. They've asked to speak with you personally, something about quotas. You wave your hand slightly. After I return from the Senate. Set them in the atrium. Let them wait. Petronius bows. He is old, yes, but still efficient. Reliable. You trust him more than most senators. From the atrium comes the faint rustle of movement. You rise slowly, draining the last of the wine. A slave slips your sandals back onto your feet and ties them with practiced ease. Are the clients assembled? You ask, adjusting the fall of your toga. The steward inclines his head. They've been waiting since first light. You pass through the vestibule, where a mosaic of Fortuna smiles up from the floor. Ahead, the great double doors of your villa part with a groan, and you step into the brightening light of morning. They are already there, lined in 2 rows, silent and hopeful. Your clients. Farmers, merchants, veterans, small landowners. Some you know by name. Most you do not. They bow as you pass, eyes lowered. Each one has come with a need. A problem. A request. And you, Patronus, are the one they rely on. One by one, they approach, kiss your ring, murmur their troubles. A missing shipment of grain. A legal dispute with a neighbor. A son hoping to study rhetoric. You listen. You nod. You give answers where you can and assurances where you cannot. You are their shield, their path to justice, their chance at hope in a city that favors the powerful and forgets the rest. This ritual, mundane to some, is sacred to you. Not because of the power it grants, but because of the balance it maintains. The empire is a machine of many gears, and each one turns only if the teeth between them are well oiled. And you are oil and gear alike. By the time the last client departs, the sun has risen fully above the rooftops. The air is warming. Rome is awake. Your litter is prepared, for sturdy bearers wait by the gate, muscles gleaming beneath short tunics. The streets will be crowded soon, and the Senate waits for no one. You pause for a final moment in your atrium, glancing back at your domus, the marble columns, the painted walls, the gods watching from their shrines. You inhale deeply. The scent of oil, myrrh, and dust. The scent of Rome. And then you step into the street. Part 3, the political arena. The litter sways gently as the bearers move through the narrow streets, their pace measured but swift. The rhythmic creak of the frame and the soft thump of sandals on stone lull your thoughts into focus. You lift the curtain briefly for air. The scent that drifts in is pure Rome, baking bread, dung, perfume, sweat, incense, and sea salt from distant amphorae. A city alive in every breath. Outside, the morning chaos unfolds with the practiced disorder of empire. Vendors call out in competing pitches. Mules strain against overloaded carts. A pair of boys dart through the crowd shouting about a gladiator match at the circus. You pass a temple dedicated to Minerva, its columns recently scrubbed. A beggar, blind in one eye, bows low and calls your name. You toss a small coin through the curtain. Let them see you give. Let them know you remember. The litter turns sharply and ascends the sacred way, approaching the forum. You see the Senate house rise in the distance, square and solemn, its bronze doors catching the sun. Guards stand at attention. Senators gather in clusters, their white togas folding like wings of waiting vultures. Already they talk, hands gesturing, lips curled in false courtesy, eyes watching for weakness. You step from the litter and are greeted by a junior magistrate with a quick bow and a scroll. The agenda is full today, Dominus, he murmurs. Tribune Scaevola intends to raise the issue of land reform. There are rumors he has support. Scaevola. That fox. You thank the aide and ascend the wide steps, each footfall echoing in your bones. The Curia looms before you, stone, shadow, and silence. Inside, the temperature drops. The great chamber hums with anticipation. Rows of stone benches line the walls in tiers. The floor mosaic, Africa's bounty, Asia's elephants, Gaul's vineyards, sprawls beneath your sandals. It is not just decoration. It is a reminder, Rome holds the world. You nod to allies. You nod to enemies. You speak to neither. At the center, beneath the eagle standard, stands the presiding consul, already calling for order. Voices lower, but eyes sharpen. You take your seat. The debate begins. Scaevola rises, his voice smooth, almost lazy, but his words coil like snakes. Brothers of the Senate, how long will we delay the inevitable? Our veterans return from the frontier with broken bodies and empty hands. Our estates grow fat while their sons go hungry. I say we return the land. What was taken by conquest must now nourish those who fought for it. Murmurs ripple across the chamber. Some nod. Others frown. You glance at the patrician opposite, his estate would be halved under Scaevola's vision. His jaw is tight, his fingers clenched. You are not surprised by the speech. Scaevola plays to the people. He always has. But now there's fire behind his words. You rise. Your toga falls like a curtain as you step forward, arms open slightly, not in challenge, but in calm. Honored fathers, let us not be moved by passion cloaked in virtue. The strength of Rome does not lie in division, but in structure. The land feeds the army because it is tended by those with means to tend it. Break the holdings, and you break the supply lines. Break the order. A pause. You let the silence speak with you. What we owe our veterans is not land alone, but dignity. Let us create positions. Guardianship of roads. Supervision of temples. Let their service be honored not by upheaval, but integration. Whispers. The consul nods slowly. Scaevola smirks faintly, bowing with exaggerated grace. The debate continues. It twists through taxes, grain supplies, temple repairs. You speak 3 more times, never long, but never forgettable. You listen more than you talk. Power, you know, is often held in what you withhold. As the session draws to a close, senators file out in loose groups, discussing, calculating, making small, tactical farewells. You descend the steps slowly. A younger senator falls in beside you, Marcus Lepidus, ambitious and slippery. A fine reply, Dominus, he says. Though I wonder if Scaevolas' wind may still fill his sails. You smile without warmth. Only if he forgets that Rome has a navy. Lepidus laughs, a touch too loudly. He's already plotting his next move. You climb back into your litter. The bearers lift you above the crowd once more. This time, the streets feel narrower. The noise louder. Back to your domus. Back to your sanctuary. You close your eyes and exhale. The Senate is behind you. For now. But the words spoken there will stretch far into the night, like smoke from a distant fire. And you must be ready to answer them all, tomorrow. Part 4, the villa as a microcosm. The gates close behind you with a muted thud, iron into oak, weight into silence. Home. The litter is lowered gently to the ground, and you step out onto sun-worn flagstones that line the outer courtyard. Slaves bow, then scatter with the soundless efficiency of a practiced household. A cool breeze carries the scent of lemon trees in crushed thyme. The fountain in the atrium sings its quiet song. Here, inside the walls, time softens. Noise dims. The world bends to your rhythm. You walk slowly now, not from fatigue, but from deliberation. Every step through your domus is a reminder of your place in the world, the busts of ancestors carved in marble lining the corridor, the painted friezes depicting victories in Dacia and Parthia, the geometric floor mosaics glinting like frozen sea foam. Each corner of this house reflects your design, your ambition, your legacy. In the tablinum, you pause to glance at the scrolls delivered during your absence. Letters from provincial governors requesting your support in the next round of magistrate appointments. A parcel wrapped in oiled cloth from a glassmaker in Alexandria, a gift, no doubt, angling for a contract to adorn your summer villa with imported lamps. You do not open them. Not yet. Instead, you move toward the peristyle garden. Here, in the heart of the villa, the world feels ancient and untouched. Fig trees lean over shaded paths. Bees drift lazily from lavender blossoms. Marble statues, Hermes, Venus, Fortuna, watch from their alcoves as if waiting for your nod to step into motion. Your wife is here. She sits on a cushioned bench near the fountain, her posture regal, yet easy. A slave girl fans her with slow, measured strokes. Another arranges a tray of fruit, plums, sliced pomegranate, fresh almonds in a silver bowl. She rises as you approach, her dress the color of late roses, her eyes cool and attentive. The Senate was unkind, she asks, voice soft but sharp-edged. You smile faintly. They were themselves. She nods, lips curving just slightly. She understands. She always does. She walks with you through the garden's shaded paths, her fingers brushing yours as you speak of Scaevola, of grain debates, of Lepidus' sycophancy. Her insight, as always, is surgical. If Scaevola wants land for veterans, she says, let him surrender his own estates in Campania. You chuckle. He would sooner throw himself to the lions in the arena. You pause beneath a colonnade. In the distance, your children's voices drift from the triclinium. Laughter. A snatch of Greek recitation. A boy mimicking a centurion's bark, answered by a girl's mock rebuke. You watch them for a moment, half-shadowed by a fig tree's leaves. Your eldest, now nearly of age, recites from Homer with practiced cadence. The tutor, an elderly Greek with ink-stained fingers, nods approvingly. Your younger son chases the family dog through the columns, giggling. Your daughter, seated near a painted column, carefully scrawls on a wax tablet, tongue pressed between her lips in concentration. They are bright. talented. But they do not yet grasp the gravity of inheritance. You wonder if they ever truly can, until it presses on their chests as it once did yours, tightening with every name spoken in public, every eye watching, every whisper questioning. You turn back to your wife. Do you think they'll carry the weight? She answers without hesitation. They won't have a choice. A silence lingers between you, not heavy, not cruel. Just real. You kiss her cheek and part ways. She returns to the garden. You ascend to the second floor, where your private library overlooks the street beyond. From this vantage point, the city unfurls in tiers, rooftops, alleys, temples, smoke rising from kitchens, a priest leading a goat through a side street toward a shrine. Rome in all its mess and majesty. You sit at your desk. The scrolls await. The wax tablets glint. You dip your stylus in ink and begin to write responses, one by one. Each reply a subtle negotiation. Each sentence a brick in the wall of your future. Even here, at home, you are never still. The domus breathes around you, fountains gurgling, birds calling, sandals padding softly in the halls. It is a temple of marble and routine. But like all temples, it is built atop something deeper. Control. Part 5, the Convivium, Dinner as Theater. As the sun dips below Rome's terracotta rooftops, your villa transforms. Torches are lit in the garden, casting flickering gold along the white stone colonnades. Slaves move like shadows, barefoot and silent, draping fresh linens over dining couches, polishing silver, arranging flowers in shallow alabaster bowls. The scent of roasted lamb, saffron, and pine nuts drifts from the kitchen, chased by sharper notes of vinegar, cinnamon, and smoke. This is no mere meal. This is the convivium, the dinner ritual of the Roman elite. A performance in 3 acts: presentation, indulgence, revelation. And you, as host, are both conductor and centerpiece. Guests arrive not all at once, but in a measured stream. A senator from Baetica, whose estates boast vineyards older than Augustus. A philosopher from Athens, lean and talkative, invited for his novelty as much as his wit. 2 military tribunes freshly returned from Germania, still sun-browned from campaign. A provincial noblewoman, an ally of your wife's family, draped in silk dyed with Tyrian purple, the shade reserved for gods and emperors. Each guest is greeted at the entrance, offered a towel soaked in rosewater, then escorted to the triclinium. Couches are arranged in a U-shape around a central table. The seating is not random. Rank and influence dictate every cushion. You recline at the upper left, locus consularis, the seat of honor. Your wife does not dine beside you, as custom dictates, but presides from a low seat beyond the curtain, ensuring everything runs like the inner workings of a timepiece. A slave offers the first wine, light, chilled with mountain snow, poured into cups of blue glass shot through with gold thread. You raise yours. The room quiets. To Rome, you say simply. The others echo the words. The convivium begins. The first course is simple: oysters from the coast near Neapolis, fresh and briny, served on beds of crushed ice. Garum drizzled lightly. Bread seasoned with poppy seed and rosemary. Conversation flows with ease at first, whether in the provinces, the merits of Syrian perfumes, a passing joke about a mule that outran a chariot. Then the second course arrives, and with it, the subtle sharpening of tongues. Flamingo tongue, braised and served with honeyed dates. Peacock roasted in its own feathers, gilded and stuffed with spiced figs. Dormice rolled in crushed nuts and honey. Dishes so rich, so outrageous, they are designed less to nourish than to impress. One of the tribunes remarks on the flavor of the garum, his voice too loud, his laugh too quick. Another guest, the philosopher, launches into a parable about moderation. It is the hungry man, not the full one, who dreams of the gods, he says, his smile just crooked enough to imply challenge. You answer without blinking. Then let us eat until we forget the gods entirely. Laughter follows. The tribune claps his hands. But the philosopher's smile lingers. Your steward appears behind you. You nod, and a new amphora is opened, Falernian wine, aged near 30 years, sealed under wax stamped with your family crest. It flows like molten rubies, potent and deep. With it, tongues loosen. The noblewoman praises the sculptor who completed your latest commission, a bust of your father. You accept the compliment modestly, while noting her glance toward the tribune seated across from her. A silent question passes between them, one you'll remember later. Then the final course, fruits glazed in honey, figs wrapped in vine leaves, almonds ground into creamy paste and spiced with cinnamon. A harpist plays a slow melody as slaves pour rosewater into bronze bowls for hand-washing. And with the sweetness, come the truths. The tribune leans close and murmurs a name, Scaevola. He has courted the military vote in Hispania, he says. Whispers of a new bloc forming. You nod. You knew this already. But now, it is confirmed. Another guest, too drunk to gauge discretion, speaks of a praetor's indiscretion with a Vestal virgin. Dangerous talk. You signal your steward with a glance. Wine is pulled back. The drunk is gently led to the garden to sober. Your wife appears briefly at the doorway, checking the room with a single sweep of her gaze. All is in order. She fades again into shadow. The convivium winds down. Guests thank you with bow and phrase. Promises are made, some sincere, some as decorative as the silver bowls. You see who avoids whom. Who lingers too long at the wine. Who makes eye contact. Who does not. It is not the meal that matters. It is the measure. The villa holds its breath as the last sandal leaves the threshold. Then, like a drawn curtain, the illusion lifts. Slaves rush forward to clear the remnants. The floor is swept, torches snuffed, cups collected. Silence returns like a tide. You remain seated, finishing your wine, gaze distant. You are full, but not nourished. Fed, but not satisfied. The feast was a mirror, and in it, you saw your power, and its cost. Part 6, The Garden Walk. The night air is cooler now, touched by the breath of the Tiber as it rolls past distant stones and moonlit bridges. Your sandals make no sound against the polished marble as you step into the garden, leaving the empty triclinium behind. Above you, the stars shimmer, sharp, white pinpricks scattered across a deepening sky. The constellation of Mars rises above the rooftops to the east. Jupiter hangs lower, brighter. You trace their positions instinctively. A senator must always know where power is. The garden is quiet, save for the rustle of palm leaves and the distant trickle of the fountain. The statues stand frozen in their usual grace, Hermes with winged heels, Diana with her bow half-raised, Ceres heavy with fruit. Each one a reminder of what Rome venerates, motion, strategy, fertility, conquest. And what Rome forgets. You walk slowly, trailing your fingers along the stone balustrade. The fragrance of pomegranate blossoms clings to the night, mingling with crushed basil and damp earth. Somewhere, a night bird sings, low and tentative. A breeze lifts the hem of your toga. This is your hour. This stillness. This moment between performance and sleep. And yet, peace does not come easily. Your mind turns, unbidden, to the day's faces. Scaevola, ever dangerous in his smiles. Lepidus, eager and forgettable. The tribunes, more loyal to ambition than oath. And beyond them, the emperor. His name goes unspoken in your household. Not from disloyalty, but caution. He is gracious this month. Lavish with praise. Smiling in the forum. But you've seen emperors turn faster than a coin in the hand of Fortuna. One word from him, just one, and your land, your name, your life could vanish. You pause beneath the fig tree where your children once played, their chalk drawings long washed away by rain and time. You remember their laughter echoing off the stone, their bare feet pattering along the garden path. It seemed simpler then, when the only danger was a scraped knee or a broken vase. Now, danger wears a toga. You lean on the railing, staring out beyond your villa's walls. From here, the city is a sea of rooftops and shadows. Somewhere out there, men sharpen plans. They whisper behind wine. They gather debts not in coin, but in favor. You've survived this long because you've learned how to walk the edge of power, neither too bold, nor too passive. Generous in public. Calculating in private. Just visible enough to be remembered, never threatening enough to be feared. But even marble wears down. Even lions age. You wonder, sometimes, what legacy truly means. Statues crumble. Names are lost in scrolls eaten by worms. Sons squander what fathers built. History forgets more than it remembers. So what remains? Perhaps only this. The feel of stone beneath your feet. The scent of fig and flame. The memory of your wife's steady eyes. The echo of your children's voices. And the hush of a garden that knows all your secrets. You turn, slowly, and make your way back toward the villa. Behind you, the night deepens. The fountain sings softly. In the city beyond, Rome the eternal sleeps on. Part 7, The Night Watch. The villa is hushed now. Not silent, never truly silent, but hushed. From the kitchens, the last clatter of bronze has faded. Servants retreat to their quarters, moving like ghosts behind curtained halls. A single oil lamp flickers in the vestibule, casting long shadows across the mosaic of Fortuna. She smiles up at you still, unchanged, unmoved, holding her cornucopia as if Rome itself could never fall. You walk slowly through the dim corridors, past closed doors and sleeping gods. In the nursery, your youngest son dreams with an arm flung across his tunic, his small chest rising and falling like the tides of the Mare Nostrum. A slave sits quietly in the corner, eyes heavy, but alert. You do not wake him. You only watch a moment longer. Your chamber awaits. The lamp is already lit. Its flame dances in a bronze dish etched with laurels and wolves. Your bed has been turned down, fresh linens stretched taut, pillows fluffed and centered. A bronze mirror catches your reflection. You look older than you feel, and yet younger than you know. There are lines that were not there last season. A softness at the throat. A weariness behind the eyes that wine and power cannot erase. Your wife is already in bed, her hair unbound, her presence quiet. She does not speak. She doesn't need to. She knows the weight you carry. She carries its twin. A slave kneels by the door and waits for your nod. You give it, and he dims the lamp. Darkness folds over the room. But you do not sleep. Not yet. You lie on your back, staring into the shadows above, where the carved wooden beams intersect like ribs over a chest. The villa breathes around you, steady and deep. You know every crack of its frame, every groan of its stones. Your thoughts return, always, to the same questions. Have you done enough? Will your children remember you for more than wealth? Will your name survive the fire and flood of empire? You think of Lucius Claudius again, your old rival. He spoke once too boldly in the Senate. Challenged the wrong man. His villa was seized. His statues melted down. His name struck from the rolls. Even his tomb now lies untended, weeds curling over his epitaph. That is how Rome forgets. Not in anger. In silence. You shift beneath the sheets, the linen cool against your skin. The sounds of the night stretch out, the call of an owl in the garden, the distant rumble of a wagon crossing stone, the faint wind stirring fig leaves like whispered promises. And underneath it all, the pulse of the city. Alive. Watching. You close your eyes. Not in peace, but in preparation. Tomorrow, the clients will return. The Senate will gather. The letters will come. The games will continue. And you will rise again, wrapped in power, weighed by duty, watched by all. Because you are not only a man. You are a pillar. A symbol. A Roman. The darkness deepens. The villa sleeps. But you do not. You listen to its breathing. And you keep watch.